Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we have a bit of a show for you. It'll be a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show, after Tuesday's show, but there'll still be some interesting bits and comments. There's only a bit of intel tonight. Unlike other shows, we don't go on wild suppositions. We say the facts when they're ready to do so. So let's get into all the links for the show. You can listen live Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live on the THI website, thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. All the archives are on there. The must listen to shows, which we now have another entry following Tuesday's show, and all the Kim shows and the Man of World Holding Trust shows are all on there, all categorized. There's a search engine to look for some of the transcripts that are on there, and there's also grounding, centering, shielding documents, and also how to correct psychic attacks. So that's kind of expanded. You can also catch me on the archives either on Friday or Saturday, depending on when our webmaster posts it up on the Tommy Williams channel on YouTube. We have the Facebook group Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative of MeWe.com, and that's also Truth, Honour and Integrity. There is the People's Club, the foundation site at thepeoplesclub.org, and my Patreon is patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. And finally, the email for the show for any questions or comments, it's truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. Right, where are we going to start? Well, normally we go straight into the news, and but I wanted to highlight this piece before we go into the news, because this is something that this show is known for, about exposing snakes within the alt media, and I've exposed a number of them, not because I want to knock the competition out, as some people accuse, but because these people are not operating in our best interests. And of course I've mentioned Robert David Steele numbers of times, and this involves him again. So this is what happened with Kevin Annett, and Kevin's been campaigning, for those who are new to the show, about the crimes of church and state that goes all the way up to the House of Windsor and the British Royals, and also to the popes in the Vatican. But Kevin got given details this week of someone within the British government has notified ITCCS and Kevin Annett that he's facing imminent arrest and incarceration anywhere in Canada or England because of the actions of a state-funded group known as International Tribunal of Natural Justice, not Justice, ITNJ. Now, according to the source, the British Security Services have placed Kevin Annett on priority 1 list of people to be arrested and detained for questioning and psychiatric examination after a letter demanding such action was received by the British Home Office from 2 ITNJ officers, Sasha Stone, whose real name is Adams, and it's current CIA operative Robert David Steele. Now, Stone and Steele recently threatened Kevin in writing that they might report him to the authorities for a psychiatric evaluation and possible removal from the public sphere. To quote Steele on his email of March 16th, these threats were issued to Kevin Annett after he responded to Sasha Stone's unprovoked attack on him last week and questioned the legitimacy of ITNJ as a genuine inquiry into crimes against children by the Church and the State. Now, to quote, Stone and Steele's threats made to Kevin on the 15th and 16th of March respectively, it was as follows: "If I hear from you again, or if you malign the ITNJ, whose undertakings are extraordinarily well documented, I may refer you to the relevant authorities for a mental health examination as well as an investigation for fraud and sedition." Signed, Sasha Stone and also Robert David Steele. "You are henceforth blocked as being an obvious lunatic with no legal standing, and I will defer to the ITNJ as to what legal action, including referral of you as an individual, Mr. Kevin Annett, to the authorities for psychiatric evaluation and possible removal from the public sphere." Now, Mr. Stone, or real name Adams, accusation of sedition by Kevin Annett is kind of revealing, since British law defines it as any covert conduct that tends towards insurrection against the Crown. Stone thereby appears to be speaking in the name of the Crown in the role of one of its officers, making a formal charge against Kevin Annett, who for years has publicly advocated an end to the Crown rule and establishment of sovereign republics in both England and Canada. The threat by both men as ITNJ officers to have Kevin psychiatrically institutionalised is also significant, based as the ITNJ is in England. For under British law, and specifically the notorious Fixated Threat Assessment Act of 2006, any Commonwealth citizen, including Canadians like Kevin Annett, can be detained for psychiatric examination if they exhibit unusual concern for particular issues, alleged wrongdoing, or key public figures, including the British royal family. This kind of broad thought crime statute is modelled on the repressive laws from the Soviet Union and has been condemned by governments and human rights groups around the world. But these actions by Stone and Steele give credence to the mounting evidence that the ITNJ is a British government front organisation, especially since that government responded in less than 24 hours to the ITNJ demand to arrest Kevin Annett. Now, ITNJ first appeared suddenly in summer of 2018, accompanied by widespread exposure in the mainstream media and the alt media, I might add, and it has held its events at luxurious facilities in the Westminster district of downtown London, which is close to Parliament. Now, its officers include an Anglican bishop and also a current CIA officer. The ITNJ has continually refused to reveal the source or amount of its funding. Not very transparent, are they? However, recent evidence uncovered by the ITCCS and Kevin Annett indicates that ITNJ in fact operates from an undisclosed budget totalling over £8 million, which is roughly $13 million US, provided from a secret covert operations fund of the British Secret Service MI5. Now, the aforementioned government source refers this to evidence and specifically a copy of an MI5 memo indicating that the ITNJ's term of fiscal operation is open-ended, depending on the most desirous course required for it, ITNJ, to guide and control the efforts of sex abuse survivors to speak publicly. ITCCS was on the verge of releasing this damning evidence to the world when the ITNJ officers Stone and Steele attacked Kevin and demanded that the British government have him incarcerated. In a letter to that government today, the ITCCS Directorate declared, "In our opinion, the ITNJ is an arm of the British Security Services and is working actively to silence Kevin Annett under the fixated threat law. We consider such an attack against Kevin as an assault on all of us and on all of the children who will die without our work. This latest assault is nothing less than an attempt by the criminally convicted British Crown to silence one of its most vocal and intelligent critics. It is a crime of lawless violence by the British government, and we demand that it and MI5 immediately cease and desist from any actions against Kevin Annett." Now, ITCCS has also launched a legal and diplomatic offence against this threat to its co-founder and frontline leader Kevin Annett, including with Amnesty International, at the United Nations and also within the European Union. And we urge everyone to write to Stone and Steele and to their respective politicians and demand that the British Crown attack on Kevin Annett stop. This is what happens when you're in the front line. I know it only too well, and Kevin only knows it too well. Threats on your life, threats of being jailed, bogus allegations, you name it. And it's up to us all to decide which ones we trust and which ones we support. But the people on the front line need your support. These goons are ramping up. Why? Because we're winning the mind war, that's why. The alt media, despite all its flaws, is still having a major effect on all the institutions around the world in one way or another, including the media. And they don't like it, and they're firing back. The likes of what's happened with Kevin, and then you've got goons setting up websites, fake websites, discrediting me, discrediting Kim. It's what they do. They thought they could get away with it by keeping it hidden, but it's not. It's no longer hidden no more. So then they outcome the let's discredit them attacks. But it's up to the people to make it not work. Because the very people that the media and certain other organisations cast as bad or wrong or this or that are generally the ones that you need to follow. That's how it works. So we wish Kevin good luck with that, and I would boycott. I would hope all our members would boycott any interview given by Steele. Steele was involved with Neil Keenan, still is to some degree, and he's also, although he lists himself as ex-CIA, there's no such thing as ex-CIA. He's involved in NATO, he's involved in this ITNJ, he tried to get involved in the collateral accounts. He's becoming the new David Wilcock. Boycott any show that has him on, is my opinion, because that man is not allowing the truth to come forward. We also highlighted the fact that he supports open source, which is NSA spying. Oops. Right, let's get into some news. The Israeli military said on Thursday that 2 rockets were fired from Gaza towards Tel Aviv, prompting sirens to sound throughout the city and putting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces re-election in less than a month. No surprise there. Let's create a distraction incident. And certain people are calling on a strong response for him, which no doubt he will deliver against the wrong people again. But there you go. And residents reported hearing loud explosions, but there were no reports of any injuries or damage. and the military said neither rocket was intercepted by the Israelis' Iron Dome military defence system, although their warning systems had operated as normal. So maybe they didn't happen. One rocket probably fell into the sea, said the Tel Aviv mayor Ron Huldai, and he said that he had instructed to the city to open all bomb shelters, but life appeared to be returning to normal shortly after the incident. Netanyahu called an emergency meeting with top security officials, which was no doubt pre-arranged. In the early hours of Friday morning, the Israeli military said it was going to be targeting terror sites in the Gaza Strip. While rocket launches from Gaza are not unusual, it was the first time in more than 4 years they have targeted the major city of Tel Aviv. Facebook said on Thursday that Chief Product Officer Chris Cox is leaving, the highest ranking executive to depart since the social media giant became embroiled in a crisis last year, which hasn't gone away. Maybe their servers are having a bit of difficulty. And he's leaving following Facebook's decision to shift the direction of its future products to focus more on encryption. Really? I will repeat again for new listeners. If you think emails and phones are encrypted and messages are encrypted, think again. Encryption was developed by the CIA and NSA, and there's backdoors in all of them. There's nothing they can't see or hear, and likewise there's nothing we can't see or hear either. And he said this will be a big project and we'll need new leaders who are excited to see the new direction through. But Cox was critical as a critical executive of Facebook, working there for more than a decade, helping to design and run the news feed, whatever, news, and then rising in the ranks to oversee all products of Facebook. And now he's gone. Another one jumping ship. The gun industry suffered a stinging setback, according to mainstream media this week, as Connecticut's top court said families of victims of the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School fake massacre could move ahead with their lawsuit against Remington Arms Company with its marketing of military-style Bushmaster weapons. In a first-of-its-kind decision, the state Supreme Court said the families could sue for wrongful marketing under a state unfair trade practice law. And the court, reinstating a suit dismissed by a trial judge back in 2016, adopted the family's novel way around a federal law that protects the gun industry from liability. But just by getting the suit to trial, the families hope to gain access to gun makers' internal communications, which may aid others seeking to pursue similar suits growing out of gun violence. And this is kind of a landmark and potentially historic ruling, according to Adam Winkler of UCLA Law School, professor who specialises in constitutional law. And while all this decision does is allow a case to go forward, in broader terms it really opens up a new avenue for holding gun makers responsible, unquote. But the point is, where does it all stop? Roundup causes cancer. Where's the ban for that? Vaccines cause autism and death. Where's the banning of that? Banks create wars. Do we ban banks? Fatty foods and junk foods create ill health. Why isn't that banned? Why can't the public sue all the junk food people, likes of McDonald's? All pharma drugs are poisons, so why haven't we banned that? and had massive lawsuits against the pharmaceutical giants. They're the ones to blame. They put them out. All lawyers operating under titles of nobility, why haven't we banned them if it's against the Constitution? The list could go on and on, but unless we make these scumbags accountable, they will always ride roughshod over us. I'll have more on what we could do with politicians later. The original live video of the latest staged attack in last week's incident at Christchurch was viewed 4,000 times before it was removed, Facebook said this week. And on Friday, a gunman live streamed for 17 minutes the attack on 2 mosques that killed 50 people. Now, fewer than 200 people had watched it live, and the first user report of the video had come 12 minutes after it had ended. But by then, the copy had been placed on alt-right file sharing site 8chan. We'll have more about the alt-right later also. Once alerted to the video, Facebook removed the original and hashed it, essentially made a digital fingerprint, meaning that material that was visibly similar to the original could be automatically detected and removed. Algorithms. And within 24 hours it had blocked 1.2 million copies at the point of upload and deleted another 300,000. However, copies that had been edited or recorded from a screen have been proven harder to spot, and said it was working with the New Zealand police on its investigation. And they went on to say, we continue to work around the clock to prevent this content from appearing on our site using a combination of technology and people, according to the Facebook Vice President Chris Sonderby in an update posted on the platform. Now, the irony of it all is they're labelling this as alt-right, which is labelled fascist, and yet they are choosing what we can and cannot watch, which is fascist. You can't make this stuff up. And there's another clown. Sinn Féin president, politician, leader of the IRA, has been criticised, Mary Lou MacDonald, after she posed with a banner reading "England, get out of Ireland." Now, Ms MacDonald was photographed with the banner during New York's St Patrick's Day parade on Saturday, and the Irish Taoiseach Deputy Simon Coveney described the banner as offensive, divisive and also an embarrassment. Now, Sinn Féin said the criticism was faux outrage and political point scoring. Really accused the others of doing what you're doing. A common theme there. And the leaders of the SDLP Alliance and the UUP also criticised Ms MacDonald. And the photo, which was posted on Twitter, they didn't ban that, did they? By Sinn Féin's official account, along with the caption "No explanation needed." And the Ulster Unionist leader Robin Swan called for the next full explanation and said the poster was highly offensive and wrong on so many levels. And it's kind of sad that whilst others celebrate St Patrick's Day in a respectful and non-confrontational manner, Sinn Féin returns to type, he said. Now, this stupid bint needs to go back to school, pure and simple. It was the Dutch and the Catholic Church that damaged Ireland, not England, not the Queen. The Dutch, William of Orange, who was Dutch, not British, at the request of the Catholic Church. And yes, England played a role in it. Why? Because of the fake religions that were created, divide and conquer. Protestantism and Catholics. If you're religious, you're actually the same religion. You're both Catholics. I'll have more on that later. And England played a role in it. There's no question that. But the original damage to Ireland, which is why they have orange lodges for the Protestants, which is celebrating a Dutch king, not a British king. That was done by the families and the church. So if they really want Ireland back, they really need to get their facts correct. Because it wasn't England. Not this time. 4 more schools in Birmingham, England this week have stopped teaching about LGBT rights following complaints by parents. Lee Trust said it was suspending the No Outsiders programme until an agreement with parents had been reached. Now, earlier this month, the city's Parkfield Community School suspended the lessons after protests were held. And campaigner Amir Ahmed said some Muslims felt victimised, but an LGBT group leader said No Outsiders helped pupils understand it was okay to be different. In a letter seen by the BBC, Lee Trust said it was halting the lessons until after Ramadan in May. Interesting that they brought a Muslim into this discussion. Yet again, it's all about providing the divide and conquer. Muslims interfering in our schools. This is how the programme works. They repeat it often. It could have been any other person. No, it had to be Muslims that complained, and we'll have to wait until after Ramadan. And you'll get people who listen to the BS portal people pushing the same narrative. The Muslims are taking over, they're bringing in Sharia law. Look, now they're dictating the British school lessons. No, it's a programme. It's all staged. And it's time people started seeing through it. Lee Trust, which is yet to comment publicly, said it wanted to discuss the programme, nice word, with parents to find a positive way of teaching about the Equalities Act. You know, I would think kids really need to learn how to add up first, or how to spell. You know, the basics before teaching about equalities. But maybe that's just me. Now, some parents at Parkfield and the other 4 schools claim the classes are inappropriate for young children, and the school's LGBT message also contradicts Islam. See, they throw it in. Now, the No Outsiders project was created and piloted at Parkfield in 2014 by assistant head teacher Andrew Moffat, who was subsequently made an MBE for his services. I told you they're all connected. You know, you do this and then we'll give you a fake title and a nice little shiny badge, you know. And the Ofsted, who are the governing body that overlooks any complaints, have deemed the lessons as age appropriate. No, they're not. Canadian opposition parties are crying foul this week, predictably, after an inquiry into a political crisis challenging Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was shut down. A Liberal-dominated parliamentary committee has dropped the inquiry, saying its objectives have been achieved. Well, to get Trudeau off. And the PM is being accused of pressuring a former minister to help cut a deal for a firm that is facing the corruption trial. It's funny how they work. Well, it's not actually, but... and he has struggled to contain the political fallout from the controversy. On Tuesday, Liberal committee members who hold a committee majority in Canada voted to end the inquiry. They said it had heard from numerous witnesses over the past 5 weeks who have presented all sides of the matter. And Conservative leader Andrew Scheer accused the Liberal Prime Minister of thumbing his nose at every single Canadian, calling the committee's move an abuse of power and an affront to democracy. Now, the new Democrat Member of Parliament, Murray Rankin, called it a transparent effort to change the channel. Yes, they're good at that. And the former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould says Mr Trudeau and members of his inner circle spent months trying to convince her that taking engineering giant SNC Lavalin to trial would cost Canadians jobs and have a potential political ramifications. It's funny how they cite that. That kind of smacks of Trump and the Saudis deal over the journalist, does it not? She also said she was subject to veiled threats, which she believes were made good when she was shuffled out of the Attorney General and Justice portfolio. Don't follow our lead, out you go. Miss Wilson-Raybould said she believed no laws were broken, but the interactions crossed the line of her prosecutorial discretion. SNC Lavalin is facing allegations that former executives paid bribes to win contracts in Libya under Mr Gaddafi's regime, which fell in 2011. And it's a case of rules for one and rules for us. And like I said, they call it justice system. Too funny, but it's just us, it seems. Laws for them and laws for us. US politician Devin Nunes has accused Twitter and 3 of its users of running an orchestrated defamation campaign against him. And Republican Congressman Devin Nunes of California has said that tweets from the parody accounts at Devin Nunes Mom and at Devin Cow violate the platform's terms of service. The tweets accuse him of federal crimes and describe him engaging in sexual activities with US President Donald Trump. He is suing for $250 million, and he said Twitter knew the defamation was and is happening, and Twitter let it happen because Twitter had and has a political agenda, and I agree. He wrote in a 40-page complaint. He says he has suffered substantial insult, humiliation, embarrassment, pain, mental suffering and damage to his reputation from the Twitter insults. Mr Nunes, who served as chair of the US House Intelligence Committee until 2019, and he became a controversial figure for his vocal support of President Trump during the investigation into alleged Russian interference in the election. He says that Twitter had shadow banned his account using algorithms to make certain posts invisible to other users. This is what's going on. And Twitter's CEO Jack Dorsey has come under fire from politicians in recent years, including Donald Trump, for censoring conservative voices. And in a hearing before US senators in 2018, Mr Dorsey admitted that the company's algorithms inadvertently reduced the visibility of 600,000 accounts. I'll repeat that again. Mr Dorsey, the head of Twitter, admitted that the company's algorithms inadvertently, which is bollocks, reduced the visibility of 600,000 accounts. That the company does not use political ideology to make decisions. Yeah, right. Although some accounts weren't appearing in search results on the platform, this was due to follower behaviour on the platform, he said, not political affiliation. Yeah, right. Twitter is very active now and is allowing all kinds of miscreants with criminal backgrounds that can say whatever they like with no comebacks. Yes, you, Bubba, Acker, David Ray, and amongst other names. And this is what they're doing. Even when complaints are made, they're saying it doesn't violate, which is utter nonsense. And maybe that's another platform we need to boycott, Twitter. It serves no purpose, much purpose anyway. The White House missed a House Judiciary Committee deadline this week to turn over scores of records as part of a sweeping Democratic-led investigation into whether President Donald Trump abused his power in office. Funny I don't recall documents being handed over about Obama. And according to a source familiar with the situation, and some former White House officials who received letters from the committee requesting documents, including former White House counsel Don McGahn and former Deputy Counsel Annie Donaldson, are referring the inquiries to the White House. In all, Republican aides said the committee had received responses from 8 of the 81 officials who received letters from the committee earlier this month, and a 9th had mailed documents, although they had not been received at the time of the report. Democrats said more recipients had agreed to provide documents to the panel, and the House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler had set a Monday deadline asking for an array of documents, including over the firing of former FBI Director James Comey, internal discussions about the decision of the then Attorney General Jeff Sessions to recuse himself from the Russia probe, and details about any talks to dismiss Special Counsel Robert Mueller, as well as records about payments Trump made as part of a hush money scheme to keep his alleged extramarital affairs from going public. Anyone else sick of hearing the name Mueller, Sessions, Comey, et al.? Because I am. This goes on and on and on. Arrest people is what the public wants, not documents. Final news item, and we'll see if we can get some Q&A in. A US jury on Tuesday found Bauer, Rothschild's AG's glyphosate-based weed killer to be a substantial factor in causing a man's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. No calls to ban that. Allowing the trial to proceed into a second phase on liability and damages. Now, the jury in San Francisco's federal court, in a unanimous ruling, found Roundup, one of the world's most widely used weed killers, to be responsible for cancer of Californian resident Edwin Hardman. But it was not yet a finding of liability against Bayer. However, the case will proceed into a second trial phase before the same jury, which took place yesterday, to determine Bayer's liability and also potential damages. Now, during that phase, Hardman's lawyers can present evidence and have allegedly shown the company's efforts to influence scientists, regulators and the public about the safety of its products, which they were not allowed to in the initial phase. Now, Bayer said in a statement on Tuesday it was disappointed with the jury's initial decision, but they are confident the evidence in phase 2 will show that Monsanto's product has been appropriate and the company should not be liable for Mr. Hardman's cancer. Really? Now, Bayer acquired Monsanto, which makes Roundup, and the case was only the second of 11,200 Roundup lawsuits to go to trial in America. Another Californian man was awarded $289 million in August after a state court jury found Roundup caused his cancer, sending Bayer shares plunging at the time, but that award was later reduced to $78 million on appeal. Right, let's see if we can get in through. I've got a load of Q&A. Let's see if we can get through some of them anyway. Kim has to figure out a way to fund these projects so that people can get things done. Kim's been working 16, 18 hours a day for the last few years to try and do that. It's not our fault or her fault in any way, shape or form as to why it's not out. It's all down to the blocking. Governments are out for themselves only, and as time goes by I'm seeing that Trump is part of the swamp. And it's getting pretty obvious now. This is why I think that the project funding for the people is critical right now. Yes, it is, and that doesn't change from one day to the next. We have tried to solicit help from within the government. We're still waiting on that. Perhaps that waiting period is over, and we will carry on working around them. But please don't put further pressure on Kim. Like I said, 16, 18 hours a day for zero pay. Would you do that? Sure you wouldn't. So we are trying everything, and we've made a lot of progress. But there's still, like in many other cases, this system on all levels goes very deep and very far, and it's got tentacles everywhere. We've cleared a lot of them out, and one day we'll clear all of them out and the transfers will go through unhindered, and they won't be able to stop it. But until that day we will carry on working. What procedures do advanced civilizations use to combine PSI fields on a planetary scale? Sport events, concerts or mass meditations only involve a fraction of the planetary's population at best. Those three generally solicit looshing, not combining PSI fields. As for combining PSI fields, it's about people acquiring a certain level of frequency, a higher level of frequency, and finding like-minded people. This is what we talk about, the circles of influence. If we have 50,000 THIs all over the world, there'll be circles dotted all over the map. Eventually those circles start to overlap, and that's how you come combined. There's a lot of people who think very similar, not all the same, as we're not all the same within THI. That is as close as to a combined PSI field as you will find. Why are the normal humans more ahead, more capable than the parent families, especially when our human DNA has been much more manipulated than the DNA of the parent families, human 1.0? It depends on where you're coming at. The question's rather vague. Are we more ahead, more capable? Some are, most aren't. Do we have the ability to be more ahead and more capable? Absolutely. And this is what this show and many other people around the world are trying to do, and empower humanity. The parents' roles were much different. In essence, they were slaves, told to look after us or interfere, was more the case. So it depends on where you're coming from, but we're not more ahead, more capable as it stands, but we do have the capability to be so. I've heard about a story that was a cover for what the governor of California was really building tunnels so the Mexican cartel could continue trafficking people across the border. Tunnels completed and covered, and the BET project then cancelled. Have you heard any difference? Well, there was lots of tunnels that were being ran by prominent politicians and gangs, and they are working together. Some of those 4 families we mentioned are working with MS-13 and also the FARC guerrillas. Cash cow, you see. Guns, drugs, you name it. Children. That's how it works. Would you recommend that we have protection, i.e. a gun? That's a personal choice, it always is. You know, a lot depends on the environment and the where you live as to whether you should acquire a gun. I would weigh up the conditions that and where you're living. But you know, I would never tell people to go out and buy guns unless it was absolutely essential. I would never tell people, even more so, to give up guns either, because essentially that's what saved us. Otherwise they would have gone right through the whole of America by now, like they did in Russia, like they did in Turkey and Croatia the minute they gave up their guns, like they did in Britain. All the countries that gave up the guns got assassinated on a massive scale. How should soul development be included in our early 12 years of education of intellectual, text and physical development, even advanced degrees of psychic magic abilities, like the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning of Professor Xavier and the X-Men? I don't think that is suitable for the majority of children in the first 12 years of what needs to be replacing education with teaching, because education means training of animals, and that's about the level it's at. As kids nowadays have been denied even the basics. You know, they need a calculator to add up. Really, that's not helping them, is it? That's pushing them into using machines, technology outside of them, when they've got a calculator within their head. So, the type of stuff you're talking about, I would introduce after 16. I don't see the point of going to school to 18 like they do in America. Quite frankly, the kids who left school at 13 100 years ago know 10 times more than a current child. And I mean 10. Go and look at the tests from 1880 at children who were leaving aged 13. Now it's leaving at 18, and they know far less than the kids 100 years ago. So this type of development, intellectual development, is for children or young adults of 16 and above, of those who are interested in it, because not everyone comes in switched on. That may increase over time as more and more of the children, more and more of them are getting shut down by labelling them ADHD. There's nothing wrong with those children except they can't adjust to the frequency here, that is all. As they get to puberty, they are better able to manage the frequency and adapt, providing you're not drugging them. Is it adding to the previous revelation of an atomic attack in Russia in the 1800s was the Tunguska event on Siberia 1908 and the Shlebinsk event near the Ural Mountains in 2013, potential attacks on the reforming Rus people, or where they are stated airburst events caused by unstable meteorites exploding above the surface. The second one, of course, we've all seen the videos. There's an object and something fires at it and it breaks up. It may well have been a meteorite. It could also have been a craft. There was certainly another aerial object in that video, so that's debatable. Now, the Tunguska could well have been a rock throwing event, and the Earth has a hidden system that fires at incoming objects, and that's what happened. That's why the object at Tunguska in 1908 exploded in the sky. The laser system, and I did say laser, came up out of the ground and fired blue lasers at the object, whatever it was, and it exploded. And then that laser system went back into the ground undetected, but the residents around the area saw it. Well, hope that helps out. Could we somehow provide a template designed for a voluntary sign-up list by state of those members who would like to take THI to the next level and meet in person? It's already been done. Lacey Eckert, I hope I said that right, has been creating THIs by the states, and some of the members have met up recently and all got on rather well, and it's from my perspective, it's pleasing to hear and see. So maybe contact Lacey on the Facebook page or on MeWe, and you can get involved in whatever state you're involved in. You may be the first in that state, so it's up to you to create THI, whatever state you come from. It's about expanding the circles. But one thing I would like to say is, please don't be adding me to the group. I have far too much to do. The Zoom, if something comes up, there's always Zoom calls done monthly intervals, that maybe things could be brought up in the Zoom calls, but I can't take any more sites on. I've got enough as it is. But I'm pleased that people want to feel they can do more and get involved and meet like-minded people, which is always helpful as well. So contact Lacey. I'll have to leave that for a minute. There's a number on Tartaria. Where the Tartary countries people from the island you spoke of? Well, the island went down continent. It wasn't an island. 110,000 years ago. The Tartar people were from between 1,000 and 1600 roughly, and then suddenly they started to be wiped off the map. I imagine there's pockets of them here and there still alive, and the oral history passed down. But the Rus went into all the Slavic countries and extended out to Poland and Austria and you name it, even Germany. Blue-eyed blondes, you see. That's where it came from. Was Grand Tartaria nation wiped from history to cover the teachings? Yes, absolutely. That's what they do. What do you think about marijuana now being a negative plant, where it has changed over for the past 10 years or so from being a positive spiritual plant? I know this will upset many people that smoke pot, but it's not a positive spiritual plant. Well, let me rephrase that. If it's smoked, it's not a positive spiritual plant. If it's used in other forms without the, I always forget the 3 letters, TCP or something, it's fine. Hemp has a lot of good use, but marijuana brings in the spirit world. That is not a positive for the vast majority of people on this planet, like 99%. And so, for the smokers of it, it's a very negative plant. It also dulls the brain, which is not a good thing. But people like it. And who am I to say you can't or you shouldn't? It's your choice. But I will warn of the dangers. You're playing with fire, and the smoking element of it is the least beneficial of that plant. How do you get rid of gallons? Is there a cure for it? Not that I understand. I asked this question, and the answer I got back was pour vinegar on it, which is like a mild acid. Most viruses don't like extremes, so I would try some vinegar on it. Now, one person who did saw improvement, that was back in 2014 and 15. Whether it was because of the vinegar or they were doing some other herbal stuff, I don't know. But, going to the doctors don't believe it exists, as many have found out. But I would try that. A mild acid, or some sort of where you can put your if it's on, it depends where it is. If it's on your forearm, you could smoke it out. The danger is it could go back in, but if you try and smoke it out where it comes away from the skin and then get tweezers and pull the thing out, that might help also. I don't know how many times I've answered this type of question. Shouldn't the peace treaty apply to most of those on the surface of the planet, as very few are truly native to the planet? In other words, does the peace treaty apply to anything with 46 chromosomes and 48 chromosomes? Indicates what truly is actually truly native to the planet. No, it applies to all beings. The peace treaty, I've said this multiple times now, it applies to all beings. There is a bigger issue where some beings have an advantage over us. They are more stringent. Human to human issues are things that we have to solve. Other beings attacking us is not allowed under the peace treaty, and they're not allowed to play games either, as certain Smokies found out last week. They paid a heavy price for interfering with Kim and I, and they will be returning. So the peace treaty was enforced. But I wish people will stop looking for angles as the peace treaty is some saviour programme. and that allows galactics to come down and sweep people up. It's only in extreme circumstances that takes place. And as you said, don't mistake it for a you come and save us, but technically it is. There's been a number of these type of questions on what the peace treaty is, and I've explained it several times now. And hopefully people will get it. What are the pros and cons of religion teaching? Well, the only pro to it is some of the moralistic writing is beneficial, but essentially you operate under the golden rule. As for all of the rest, I think Tuesday's show showed you exactly where and what religion is. And if people want to continue it, they're compliant in child sacrifice, in my opinion. I know that sounds harsh, but that's what these people with these religions have been doing. And no, perhaps I better stop there. I'll have more on that in an op-ed piece when I cover slightly about the show on Tuesday. How does the deep state keep the markets afloat when they have no access to free money? It's all an illusion, that's why. And some people decide to bet on it and keep it going, liquidity, when everyone should pull out of it and let it sink. It's all an illusion. Is the team equally active ongoing with other major governments in the top global power structures? I presume you're talking about the Man of World Holding Trust. Yes, we are. Which ones we're not talking about, because those the minute you mention names, those people get killed or threatened. Is the criminal cabal pilfering all countries' bank accounts, i.e. Latin America, Commonwealth countries, EU, Russian, Asian, African, or only USA Inc.? All. They had backdoors in every single bank all around the planet. I must have answered this question about... I wish people would pay more attention to the questions I've answered. I'd like to know more about organ. I've covered that several times in several shows. Some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. Depends on the individual. Is Russia still under Soviet control? No, it's under Jewish control and has been since 1919. And is Putin just another one of the dark ones? Initially he was. I wouldn't say he's fully clean now either. He could have, like Trump, should have made far more changes by now, in my opinion. They has done a lot for the Russian people, but he wanted to be king of the world, and that failed. But maybe it's better to be king of the people. But Putin, like Trump, is dealing with deep state. There's a deep state in Russia, there's a deep state in China. It has a lot of enforcement, which is something we don't have in full at the moment. So, they step out of line, the deep state shoots them. And that's part of the problem at the moment. Brexit seems a mess at this time. However, as being a fellow Brit, can or will Britain be able to economically make its own way? Yeah, all countries can make their own way when there's less central interfering. Britain has a choice. There are funds for Britain should it step down out of the Rothschilds et al. System and the Dragon Group system. There'll be funds for Britain to run autonomous and sovereign again. But at the moment, the goons are running the country at the moment, as you can see with the opening piece tonight with Kevin Annett. CIA comes calling to MI5 and suddenly they're threatening. Will the other UK countries go their own way or go along with Britain? Ireland won't, because Ireland thinks it has to go separate to Britain on everything, because Britain's to blame for everything. That's Southern Ireland. Northern Ireland has some issues over it, but then Northern Ireland kind of got, if anyone has the complaint between the two Irish, North and South, it's Northern Irish people, because they got roped into it because of Northern Ireland's on certain minerals. It has an important dock, but it's blaming a whole country for it. When I blame the Dutch for what happened in Ireland, I'm blaming the House of Orange, not the Dutch people. This is where people get all too defensive. Oh, he's attacking my country. No. Is spirituality just another form of looshing? Not when it's done inward, it's not. Spirituality means going inside of yourself. So if you're doing it properly, how can you become a loose battery? Because everything's going inward, whereas religion is external. Something's outside of you, something's higher than you, etc., etc., etc. It's all illusion. Spirituality is being in touch within and of yourself. It ends the illusion. Like being 45, 55. Are spirit guides a psyop? I'll leave that question to next week. I think I'm kind of running. Is Trump still being leveraged? In a way, yes. If so, what leverage is being used? That's operational. I'm not answering those type of questions. What does arm fee mean? Stupidity. Real meaning, a currency revaluation, a reset of all the currencies, which the dollar will go down to about 20% of its current value, so they can crash the whole country, which is what we've been telling people. Any info to share on the dark, deep web? Not really. I'm not a proponent on it, and I don't go on it either. Knowledge or even possible ending. Can I do something else against this? Just don't go on it. If everyone stopped going on it, it's making a difference if it exists or it doesn't, does it? Last question. Supposing USA Inc. is formally dissolved and sovereignty is claimed, there is a debate regarding what will immediately happen and what will be up to us to push for after. I did a full piece on the ideas around sovereignty about 2 months ago, if memory serves me correctly. It'll be in the transcripts of all the details of what it entails and what will happen or what should happen and how things will go once sovereignty is announced and what will change. Right, we're going to have a music break and then we'll be back with a small bit of intel. What should we go with? Let's go with this. Hi all and welcome back, and we're going to get into a little bit of intel, not as much this week, but unlike other shows fairly close, we will not be making wild assumptions that this is ready and that's ready when it's not. So last Thursday Kim and I were up most of the night because the clowns, of course, were delivering the new system, which they'd done the previous Saturday and was shut down. They were going to have a hackorama all night, which went on till just started about 1 o'clock and went on till about 5 to 6 Friday morning. All of it failed, and their RV payout subsequently wasn't delivered. They paid a price for that. Lots of servers got fried, and more blocks were put on, and more back doors were put in as well. More back doors were taken out, sorry. So I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, March the 15th, the Ides of March came and went. Trump had told them that that was their final day, and here we are now, March the 21st, and still we wait. It's not our fault or doing, I might add, but the delays are becoming an increasing concern of lack of support from people who have the authority to do so. What I can say is, because I've seen and witnessed the evidence of, a bit of progress is being made on some fronts. More work was completed this week, and that will be revealed when it's safe to do so. And in some cases it's either stolen or not being made, progress that is, mainly in a field that we can't control, but we will keep trying to get people to see sense and or just do their jobs. That's all for the intel this week. How are we for time? An hour and a half. Right, I'm going to give you one of the government documents that was prepared for when we did the IRS revision, and this is a 3-page document about the history, the full history of the IRS, and it kind of tells its own picture in many ways. And of course taxation has been the subject of controversy and hostilities in America since before its inception, from the cries of no taxation without representation to read my lips, no new taxes, except we know that never happens, and it's been a bit of a political hot button of never-ending disagreement. Its most current form started as a way to fund the American Civil War, which we may have more on later, and was interrupted by several constitutional arguments. Those resulted in taxation at the federal level being declared unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. Now, this left the idea of the federal government levying taxes on the citizenry in limbo until 1913, when the Federal Reserve stepped in. And with the ratification of the 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution, now there's also much disagreement that was actually even ratified. You need 2/3, if memory serves me correctly, and only about 7 or 9 states actually declared it. And so here's a brief history. In 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified and taxes now became constitutional. Like I said, there's no evidence to support that to be the case. And in 1913, the Bureau of Internal Revenue was created under the Department of Treasury. Not the Department of US Treasury, the Department of Treasury. In 1919, the 18th Amendment ratified, and Commissioner of Internal Revenue was tasked with enforcing prohibition under the Volstead Act. Then it went quiet for a bit while the bankers planned for World War II and let's wreck America's economy. And 1930s, the Bureau of Internal Revenue established geographical regions operations, including opening of 2 international offices of the IRS in London and Paris. Who controls those 2 countries, or those 2 cities? The Rothschilds. 1930s, private corporation formed for Internal Revenue and Federal Reserve in Delaware, thereby making them a private contracted organisations rather than a government-owned organisations under the umbrella of the Department of the Treasury as enacted by Congress. Basically just stiffness. 1934, the 18th Amendment was repealed and responsibility changed to administering alcohol tax and a national firearms tax. 1934 again, the Revenue Act of 1934 starts the beginning of basis for Internal Revenue Code, revenue regulations and proposed regulations. 1935, the Social Security Act was passed and added that to the scope of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. That's when it all took place. 1938, Revenue Act of 1938 passed by congressional override of presidential veto, creating what is considered the first official tax breaks for corporate America. Corporate. 1938, again, concept of unemployment insurance began to form with the passing of Railroad Unemployment Insurance Act. 1939, revenue laws codified into what is now known as the Internal Revenue Code. 1942, Revenue Act passed, increasing scope and rates of taxes and created the concept of certain income tax deductions. 43, Current Tax Payment Act and Individual Tax Income Tax Act of 43 and 44 were both passed, establishing the rudimentary form of tax system similar to the structure used today, all while the war was going on. A bit like the Bretton Woods. 1952, President Truman proposed a reorganization plan numero 1, which was later endorsed subsequently by President Eisenhower, a mistake he later admitted to in his farewell address. 1953, through several Treasury orders issued by Treasury Secretary George M. Humphrey, Bureau of Internal Revenue was changed to Internal Revenue Service, not by an act of Congress, but specifically by a Treasury Department Order 150-29. 54, Revenue Ruling 54 to 72 established the concept of private letter ruling, starting the ability for circumvention of code on an individual transaction basis. 1959, Enrolled Agent Programme was established to allow for those not qualified under normal regulatory qualification standards established by Congress to practice before the IRS to do so under Treasury regulation, not the main Treasury, I might add. Congress amends Internal Revenue Code to make Chief Counsel and presidential appointments again after Treasury regulation was issued, making it an appointment by Director of Internal Revenue. 1961 had a number of inputs. The Internal Revenue Service begins using computers. 1961. With the implementation of National Computer Center in Martinsburg, West Virginia. And you all thought it started in the 80s. 1961, IRS using computers. President Kennedy makes public statements regarding weeding out corruption in the Internal Revenue Service. And ADP redeployment guidelines were issued, further removing control over the Internal Revenue Service from the Department of Treasury. Congress passed law requirement of use of Social Security numbers and employer identification numbers in the conduct of business pertaining to all taxes. Nice of them. 1962, a joint Treasury IRS task force was established to start advising for the need to compile data and statistics on tax filing. That's your new metadata. 1962. 1965, IB Marduk 360-65 computer systems became the national standard for IRS data processing. 1967, Inter-American Center on Tax Administration was formed in Panama. I never realized Panama was part of America. I thought I was good at geography. As a way of processing and sharing tax information between countries in the Western Hemisphere. So this is like the Five Eyes now. Not only these looking for terrorists to attack countries, they're going to share tax data. 1965, that started. 1967, Inter-American Center on Tax Administration, 1968, Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Division was changed to Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms and was given law enforcement jurisdiction only Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act. Subsequently, explosives were also added to their jurisdiction. 1969, the IRS begins testing integrated data retrieval system to accumulate more data. 50 years ago. 1970, the Bank Secrecy Act passed, establishing controls over cash transactions. Don't you just love it? 1970 again, Comprehensive Drug Act passed, adding responsibility of narcotics enforcement over to the ATF. 1972, the ATF was separated from the IRS and placed under Treasury directly, eliminating all criminal enforcement from IRS purview, as that was by law under FBI authority. So the FBI, the IRS was also running FBI investigations. Unbelievable. 72, Federal State Tax Collection Act passed, allowing the IRS to enter into agreements to collect taxes for states that closely conform to federal tax law. 1973, IRS switched to Honeywell systems for more data processing. 74, IRS established Federal Energy Office that has no authority to form. In other words, they just make up their own rules in their own departments. 1975, IRS is brought into cooperation with the International Monetary Fund under the United Nations restructuring. And people were saying we don't want the UN. They've been involved since 1975. That's when a lot of the financial things got changed. I remember Kim mentioning about 75. There's all kinds of different agreements and treaties and pacts and all kinds rewritten around 75, 76. So the IRS merged with the IMF under the UN, 1975. 1976, new case inventory control and management system is established with direct integration with Inter-American Center, whatever that means. 1977, IRS implemented the Audit Information Management System worldwide, not just America. 78, ERISA, E-R-I-S-A, passed, separating jurisdictional authority of employment matters from the Department of Treasury to the Department of Labour. 1979, IRS begins major system upgrade program. 1980, UNIVAC and COBOL systems come online at the IRS. 1982, the Treasury Department announced it was unable to support the legal authority of the IRS to enforce public policy. 1982, IRS enforcing public policy. 82 again, Treasury Order 150-95 restructures the IRS, including claiming authority of appointment to positions normally held by the President. You gotta love them with their systems. 1982, UNIVAC 1100-82 systems were starting to be put in place to replace microfilm. 82 again, the IRS created new position of legislative liaison in efforts to influence congressional decisions directly. A liaison officer to influence congressional decisions directly. 1982, IRS. 1983, IRS consolidates and integrates its phone systems. 1986, IRS implemented International Computer System despite Treasury rejection of it. 86 again, Tax Reform Act of 86 passed, 125 pages of which are still redacted or considered classified regarding expansion and control of the IRS to non-government officials. 125 pages of the Tax Reform Act redacted, in other words, scrubbed out. And the goons in Congress allowed that to be passed. 1989, Congressional Subcommittee begins looking into IRS misconduct. 30 years ago, and we're still waiting. 1990, Treasury Integrate Management System begins implementation. 1990 again, Treasury Order 150-02 recognises IRS senior management. So the main financial centre of America is operating under a foreign agent, the IRS, which is operating on behalf of the Crown and also the IMF and the UN. 1998 IRS Restructuring and Reform Act was passed, still leaving it under control of the Department of Treasury and establishing what is known as the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. Yeah, right. 2006, the IRS begins outsourcing collections with payments to vendors for services exceeding the collections ratio of 23 to 1. In other words, they're hiring mercenaries to go and threaten people to pay up. 2013, IRS investigated for politically targeted audits and determination of tax-exempt status. That was 6 years ago. I wonder what happened to that. 2015, major IRS data breach discovered. That was 4 years ago. Wonder what happened with that. Nothing. 2017, major restructuring of tax code under Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Other items of note. Upon the formation of the United States Postal Service, a franking agreement was established allowing the United States government to send parcels and correspondence through the mail system without charge. However, as a private corporation, the Internal Revenue is not entitled to that privilege and should be paying for postage, documenting their actual operating structure. Now, the Internal Revenue Service, through the act of portraying themselves as a government agency with authority and sending correspondence through the mail, is committing major infractions under the RICO Act. Title 31 of the United States Code disclosed that the Internal Revenue Service, a private corporation, is not shown as a division, bureau, or any part of the U.S. Treasury Department under USC 31, Subtitle 1, Chapter 9, Section 901. The Internal Revenue Service is not listed as an organization, corporation, or entity owned, operated, or authorized by the United States government. The Internal Revenue Service publications, they state that their authority under Section 7801 of the Internal Revenue Code. However, this section only applies to alcohol, tobacco and firearms and the Justice Department. So the IRS has got control of the Justice Department. You can't make this stuff up. And people wonder why it takes so long for things to get done. This deals directly with law enforcement powers and investigative powers, and has been the case since 1913, as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, was specifically mandated with criminal and investigation authority by Congress. All matters involving the Internal Revenue Service are de facto civil collection matters and has no basis for the establishment, creation or operation of an armed enforcement division with arrest authority which is in direct violation of the United States Constitution. Armed Enforcement Division. Tax collectors? Final piece on the IRS. Under the Lobbying Disclosure Act, government agencies are restricted from lobbying directly with the federal government. As such, the activities conducted by the Legislative Liaison Office of the IRS are being done under the auspices of their private corporation status. Further, since those activities are being done under the guises of being part of the government, they are tantamount to fraud and in violation of sections of this Act for failure to disclose and report, and also additional RICO statutes. history of the IRS. I bet that surprised some portions of it. Well, that's what we're dealing with. Private organisations operating as the government. And whilst at times I've been critical of Trump, you can see the issues that we're facing. A myriad of corporations that people all think are part of the government, and they're not. They're just not. The IRS running the Department of Justice? Really? What have they even got to do with firearms? Or alcohol? Armed enforcement? For a foreign agent? You know, one of the intel pieces from last year, Kim stopped the roughly 800 billion being transferred out of the IRS to Rothschild's bank in Switzerland. Not a single cent of that money is going to the American people, and hasn't done for over 100 years. Where's the outrage from the media for that? Why aren't the media calling for a ban on the IRS? Because those people don't pay tax, that's why. Only the real workers pay tax. The non-workers don't pay any. The upper class and elites don't pay any. Just the mugs who work. And this is what's wrong. And this is why the system is broken and it's never going to work. Just that they haven't worked that out yet. World of politics, eh? A cesspit of lurid behaviour, backstabbing, corruption, fraud, lobbyists, control system, agenda-driven people, whether coerced or not. All a world of divide and conquer. And you can kind of take your pick from Republican, Democrat, Liberal, Conservative, left or right, and a whole heap of other BS labels to all keep you distracted when you've got private companies running all of it. Of course, often is the case that personalities come into it. Some go for the male or female vote, as witnessed in the last election, and some go the colour vote, as witnessed in the previous two elections. Some will go the nationality route, and media kind of dictates all of it to impose what the system wants you to hear and not what you need to hear. And essentially this is the current role model of the world of politics. Life and TV drama all played out in the political arena. One could argue that politicians are kind of a reflection of society. And with good cause, I feel, also, when you witness some of the behaviours going on. But too many get embroiled in all of the above, which is essentially just noise, and fail to address the real issues. Too often drama becomes all too addictive. He or she is sleeping with this one or that one, when people forget that a sizable chunk of those political marriages are shams to begin with. Some of it to cover up homosexuality, or in the main case, keep things in-house. House being the operative word, as in the family's house. Like, for argument's sake, Hillary Clinton and Barbara Bush, both were known as being lesbians, and yet they both got married to political partners. George Jr. was known for being gay, but he got married. Bill Clinton should never have married anyone, let's be honest. He likes the new model too much. But the problem with Bill is he was a Rockefeller and Hillary was a Rothschild. And so the marriage was arranged. It's like the Hilton family, another elite family. married a Rothschilds recently. They've done this for hundreds of years now, and it's all a sham. So the questions we have to ask is, why are prominent politicians married to partners of Google, Facebook, Twitter and Yahoo? Because it's all about keeping it in-house. That's the top and bottom line. Keeping the masses out of the party and out of what is really going on. And the problem the people face is we must learn to not focus on the labels or the personalities, because all of that is a total distraction. If you really want to solve politics in our government, you have to leave behind the personalities, the labels and the drama, and focus on one thing only: the policies. I've just read you out a whole heap of policies that no one bothered is even aware of, because we don't take the time. It is fixing them that dictates the direction the country is going to go in. So when election time comes round again and people vote for labels and personalities again, instead of what did my senator vote for or against, and was it for or my or our benefit, then you'll understand why this or any other country never actually changes, no matter who goes in. Well, the big issue the past week has been New Zealand. And I want to say straight off, if people really died in Christchurch, New Zealand, I'm sorry for your loss. But we can only assume at this point that they died, as we were not there. Just because the news reports it as fact does not make it so. That's not being callous in any way. It's stating what is real and what is not. We are assuming at this point. If we have people on the ground that can verify it, then that becomes more real. But the reaction of the world's media makes things about what happened in New Zealand look highly suspicious. This was a media report about 10 to 20 minutes before the attack in New Zealand. Someone posted on a section of 8chan, which the media described it as a message board popular with the alt-right, that term again. And the post included links to the suspect's Facebook page, where he stated he would be live streaming and published a rambling and hate-filled document. Now, 49 or 50 people died, and the narrative who did it, why, and then links to Trump within minutes or hours is all too convenient for me. All too convenient. We've seen it so often before. And it resembles a prearranged script. Why? Because 4 people who were arrested becomes 1. And silence on what happened to the other 3. Reports of 2 gunmen suddenly becomes 1. And to top it all off, the police and the services were having a training exercise all at the same time. Same shit, different day, different country. And this is why they really deleted the video, to cover up their own fake story. Now this comes just 9 months after the children of the Parkland school shooting in Florida, who coincidentally turned up in Christchurch, New Zealand. Now, I would, people of Norway, beware, because they attended your country recently as well. But these are so-called traumatised kids parading around the world to highlight gun issues. Which school psychologist allows that to happen. Unless, of course, they're not traumatised at all and are just playing roles of actors. But who's allowing them to skip lessons to visit countries? Do people not ask these questions? And the question is, why are the so-called victims of a shooting going parading around the world, highlighting one incident that to some has so many holes in it, it resembles a Swiss cheese, the Parkland shooting? Funny enough, where is David Hogg these days? Perhaps he got exposed too much as being an actor, eh, David? Hogg is like David Wilcock. He gets turned on and off they run. Now, in reality land, our world, not theirs, real murders take place largely in secret or secluded places, do they not? So as to not get captured. And detectives spend weeks and months, sometimes years, piecing the crime scene all together and looking for clues. But these terrorist people are quite remarkable people, you have to say. They not only carry out the crime, but they let all the authorities know who did it. And then they do a video of themselves committing murder. And then all too often, conveniently, die before an investigation is carried out. Do these people actually die? Either the victims or the alleged perpetrators, who knows? But one thing I do know is people don't normally confess to doing crimes, like these conscious-minded terrorists. You know, you have to say they're completely unique in society, where everyone lies to others and themselves. But these terrorists, oh no, they tell the whole world they have killed everyone. They also leave clues lying around handily so that the detectives don't have to do much investigating. Like the passport that came out of a pocket, that jumped out of a plane, that not only crashed into a concrete building, but exploded in a ball of fire. It then survived a burning inferno 76 floors up, and then went on another journey and did a Disney Tower of Terror ride on steroids, plunged through fire, concrete and melting steel, exhibiting strange melting properties, unlike the non-burning grass in Paradise, California, and the passport fell 76 floors, avoiding getting trapped in any rubble, avoided being buried in 6 to 8 inches of ash, and landed right in front of an NYPD cop for evidence. It's remarkable stuff. You should make shows on it. You know, these terrorists and their passports. The only thing missing was a copy of the Quran that seems to get left around at crime scenes. But another question is, why are these massacre events appear to be only in mosques and synagogues? Seeing the connection? And then you have the media giants condemning anyone this week for playing the online video posted on YouTube, accusing each other of using death as a clickbait item. Oh my, how sanctimonious these portal people are, because a more public platform posted a national story before they did, followed by more spinning of this is right wing and all links to Nazis or white supremacists again, all conveniently packaged for the headline for the sheeple. YouTube, as we said earlier, spent all day removing the video. But it's funny, the media broadcasting standards don't do the same for the death and violence the mainstream media shows, does it? Who can forget the coverage of shock and awe? Yes, you, Mr. Rumsfeld. With presenters almost salivating as bombs are raining down on people and killing thousands. Where was the removal of that for sensitivities? Just maybe it was not for sensitivities they were banning all the footage, gunmen or otherwise. Maybe they were attempting to cover up something else entirely. The reality is they were blocking it because it was all an MK Ultra staged event is why. Manchurian Candidate. Like the Batman shooting. And right on cue, just like the Patriot Act, in steps the New Zealand Prime Minister stating the following: the New Zealand PM has promised to change firearms regulations in the wake of Friday's attack. It's funny we don't hear. We have to look at our way of running the government when one or more of our senators are done for corruption, fraud or kiddie fiddling, isn't it? Oh no, we can't look at that. Or we have to look at the robber barons in the government doing backdoor deals to steal all the natives' land in New Zealand, Mrs. Arden. Oh no, we can't be doing that. We can only use it to impinge on the people's rights, not the politicians. Well, let's all work to fix that. No chance. Whilst all kinds of criminality pervades their whole government. Now, in the wake of the shooting, several world leaders called on social media companies to take more responsibility, which is, in other words, let's ban a load more people, which they've been doing hidden, except to those in the alt media. For the public, they don't notice jack shit, let's be honest. So they make it a public event. And take more responsibility for extremist material posted on their platforms. And New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said social networks were, quote, the publisher, not just the postman, unquote, in reference to their potential liability for the material shared in them. Really, Mrs. Arden? And who made you the world's police of who can deliver news or not? So essentially what she was saying is they decide what you cannot see or hear. Personally, I think you should focus more on keeping in check what looks suspiciously like a penis in your pants personally, or was that a staged distraction piece to reflect the real issues, Mr. or Mrs. Ardern? Well, a message for you, Jacinda, and your fellow criminal band of stiflers. It's we the people who decide, not you. We are here to provide balance, as neither governments nor media provide balance or truth. And we are past the time for believing your fake narratives, false flag attempts to garner a solution for the system that we the people don't want. Manchurian man fires a gun, people get banned from it, and new legislation is announced. Facebook, Google, Twitter promote child pornography, soliciting children, gratuitous violence, and yet nothing happens to them. Or is it ever brought up as a national or international concern? The NSA and various other rogue agencies are illegally spying on all people, hacking into their banks and their accounts, and yet where is the outrage for that? Is it ever mentioned by governments or media? No. But now the social media shows something that hasn't been filtered by these same rogue elements, oh, we have to ban that, delete it, and then give our bullshit version of the events for the ignorant public. Well, it doesn't work that way anymore, Mrs. Arden. Too many of us now have caught on to your bullshittery, and we ain't going away no matter how much you try to restrict us. We'll find other ways. We always will. And maybe along the way we'll fry your service. So the next piece is about the alt-right, known as fascists. And they're to blame for the New Zealand attack. And as I say, the alt-right is linked with white extremists, and Chan 8 or 8chan, they are labelled also as white supremacists, and so they can link it to Trump and subsequently Q. This is a program insertion method. This is how they do it. It always starts off with an incident, it gets lost in the noise, and they roll something in behind it. Of course, Miss Piggy chimed in this week, Chelsea Clinton, commenting on the attack in New Zealand, which was where Muslims got killed, and decided it was better to reference anti-Semitism, which, as we all know now, is only linked to one peoples now, and the people of Israel. What has Muslims being killed roughly 8,000 miles away got to do with Israel or Jewish persecution? Nothing. But it's the same program insertion method is why. People who are in trauma, let's remind them of the Holocaust, shall we? Like that is the most important tragic event in history. Ignoring the fact that the same people who brought you the Holocaust theme murdered 70 to 90 million Russians 100 years ago. As a matter of interest, did you know the term Holocaust was not introduced until 1957? 12 years after the war. We have to be aware of the memes and the themes and connect the patterns. This leads you then to connect the dots and see what is real and what is not. The media, because they're losing badly, has now gone into overdrive on right-wing or alternative right narrative. You see, it all fits into nicely what I covered in Tuesday's show, does it not? It's the same program. So, let's look at the statistics, shall we, for alt-right crimes. Let's see how bad it really is. And if the media is telling the truth, then we'll hold our hands up. So, Europol, which is the European Union Law Enforcement Agency, last year recorded 5 right-wing terror plots. 5. All of them were done inside the UK. This was out of a total of 205 potential or successful attacks recorded by the European intelligence agencies. The alternative to right-wing is left-wing. They committed 24 attacks. The jihadists, 33, and the separatists, 137. So whilst all terror attacks are not good, whether they're engineered or not, the alt-right was the least trouble by a wide margin. 5 compared to 24, 33 and 137. So Out of a total of 1,219 terror suspects that were arrested, of that 1,219, 20 were far-right extremists. 705 were jihadists, whatever that means. So let's get this right. 20 classed as alt-right out of 1,219 arrested is more of a problem, and yet it has less incidents and crimes than the other three sections recorded. But who created the alt-right? Who are linked with the alt-right? And in particular, the KKK, the Democrats, the enforcement arm of the Democratic Party back in 1860. And yet they accused Trump of it. Why? Because if Trump shoots back, no, you are actually the alt-right fascists, it will look childish. It's a classic agency think tank tactic of accuse the other of doing what you're actually doing. Ain't that right, Bubba? Yes, you clown. But who created the jihadists? The agency people, at the request of the Egyptian Israelites. Is who? See the full circle? Now, no one is saying these alt-right people are all right. Anyone committing violence needs to stop it. But like I said in a recent show, with white demographics going down 2/3 in under 100 years, we have a big problem here of one particular species on this planet. But where is the meme of white lives matter? It doesn't exist. You know, to me, all lives matter. But people have to see we are being steered into a genocide program that too few can see through at the moment. And that is why I keep warning of it. Final piece before we go into a music break. I couldn't go through this show without not referencing Tuesday's show, From Russia with Love, Part 3. Parts 1 and 2 set the stage, but 3 has started to really connect the dots of what has really gone on this planet. And also how they have put it all in our faces, and yet too many couldn't see it. Now this revision of our history is on a far more massive scale than you can all comprehend. The jigsaw puzzles of all jigsaw puzzles, except many of the pieces in the box, were removed or damaged. And I'm hoping with those 3 shows I've managed to get you all to at least see some of the puzzle forming into a picture we can now all start to recognise. That's the key. Fake history, death, destruction, pedestry, child sacrifice, wars, rape, pillage, convert, religions, invading the very institutions we require to care or look after us. Clever word and spell magic abounds into every book relevant to our story. Twisted beyond all reasoning into a system of harvesting. They stole everything along the way, including child innocence, child lives, towns, villages and cities, and eventually whole countries. But with religion they stole our humanity. In terms of life, force, energy, souls, who and what we are, made everything external when all you seek is internal. And if that wasn't enough, these same godly people partake in a sacrifice ceremony that uses children for their own sick needs. You choose to ignore it by continuing to go to church. That's fine. But let it be known you are a participant in a cult that holds no value for life and, more importantly, children. Still want that on your own conscience? Just because you can't stand in your own sovereignty and need a fake God to worship and or to save you as a crutch, you ignore everything. But I'm sorry if that offends some people, but that is the reality. This is what they've been doing while you've been sitting there singing hymns and praying to the Lord. And a reptilian. But my church is not like that, Thomas. Bollocks. The evidence of it is overwhelming. You can't keep ignoring it. Well, you can, but I won't. Whether many are participating or not, the whole religion thing is a cancer to this planet. But Thomas, my religion is different. Really? It's just not. So here's a bit of a timeline of how they all lead back, not to Rome, oh no, but Baal, which is a title played by Marduk, son of Anu, grandson. The top of the tree was Baal and the Brotherhood of the Snake, which took part in human sacrifice, cannibalism, and were also sodomites. Then came the Torah. Is it Torah or Tu-Ra? Oops. Same timeline. Torah led into the Talmud. Yes, the same book that tells you all non-Jews were created so they wouldn't have to be served by beasts. Nice godly book that is, isn't it? Then came Judaism, known as the Synagogue of Satan, which is another title, not a single being. Then along came the Egyptian Kalibar brethren, lured in Rome, and then created Christianity. That came out of Egypt, not Rome. After their named saviour, who they killed, according to the book, had already died. So Jesus was not a Christian. Council of Nicaea, 300. In came the Catholics and the worship of Ra again. In came an offspring of Christianity, which is a sect of Christianity called Islam in the 600s. Islam was a Christian sect. Around 1100, another Christian sect split and created the Muslim religion, all worshipping Allah, without realising Allah just means God. Just another name for God, or the God. Then in the 1500s, a group of protesting Catholics decided they didn't like the fraud and corruption of the Catholic Church, and then another religion was spawned, the Protestant. No, it was nothing to do with Henry VIII, that was all bollocks. Protestant morphed into other small sects of Catholics, like Methodist, Baptist, Episcopal, Pentecostal and other derivatives. All goes back to the same worship of Baal, Ra and Marduk, who played both of those roles. 1800s brought in another religion when a group of Ra followers made the heroic journey, we're told, across the plains of America, now known as the Pioneers. Pioneer means foot soldier. Foot comes from the term ped, as in pedestry and pedophile. And likely why there's a reference to footwear, shoes or lack of them in the pictures Q put up recently. It's all the key. But the pioneers were thrown out to start off with. Where? New York. No surprise. And they ended up in Utah and built the temple. Temple means temple to Ra. Like Solomon built, like Herod built. And called it the Church of Zion, as in Zionists. Another temple and another religion to Ra, this time called the Mormons. You still want to go to church? When it started at the top, Brotherhood of the Snake, worshipping Baal, who took part in human sacrifice, cannibalism, and were sodomites. That is what all religions stem from. Harvesting and abuse. Freemasons were created to take the hidden underground route of all worship everything Egyptian, and how the Egyptians were the best masons on the planet. Newsflash, they're not. And they never built the pyramids either. The snake paid to cover up all history in that region. Zahi Hawass should be removed from society, in my opinion. He's covering up human and child sacrifice. Oh, the glorious pharaohs, my arse they are. Are you a Freemason? Well, you're participating against humanity as well then. Like religious people, you have a choice. Walk away. Neither organisation are anywhere near what we are led to believe they are. The reality is they are cults against humanity. We've been steered towards the abyss with these psychopaths, hell-bent on worshipping the fake gods whose only interest in us is to harvest us. It's all documented now, and yet so many want to meet up or visit these harvesters. Full ET disclosure, they cry. You can't handle full disclosure. I'm sorry, but that is a fact on so many levels, because some of the things you find out are not going to be too pleasant. You're going to see a lot of my favourite GIF on MeWe. Full disclosure. And yet, all through it all, there's a song in there somewhere. When there was doubt. We've all still survived. And that is the key point here. The odds were stacked by ridiculous levels against us, and yet here we all are, still fighting. Still here, and fighting back. In your darkest hours, remember that as a source of pride. We have survived against all odds and remained, for the large part, still human. Hi all, Yeah, let's have that one to end that. Next part we're going to cover is kind of backs up what we've been saying on Tuesday. And in particular in New York, I've referenced it a number of times. You'll understand why, maybe in part 4, maybe in part 5. Well, it's the takeover of America. Now, another family to reference for more connections is the Sackler family. Now, the original Sackler was Isaac. Of course, the Sackler family are now embroiled in the opioid crisis and obviously the subsequent lawsuit. But 100 years ago, where the Sackler family started, Isaac Sackler married his partner Sophie, except Sophie turned out to be a Greenberg. All in the family again. Common theme. So like the Sackler family, the Greenbergs were also born in New York and were also born to Jewish parents. And the list just keeps on growing, does it not? So I looked into this particular family and I was intrigued by the number of art, cultural or archaeological sites that this family has exhibitions in. And then you ask the question like, why a Jewish person would be so interested in Egyptology. The Sackler family has acquired almost half of the Dender monuments and I've installed it in the Met Museum in New York. But just why would Egypt, the country, donate it to the Sackler family and place it in New York to begin with? Unless there's a direct link. Well, I think From Russia with Love 3 provided that link. So let's go through some of the galleries and extraordinary things that this Sackler family have. American Museum of National History, Sackler Educational Laboratory, New York. Dyer Art Foundation, Sackler Institute, New York. Guggenheim Museum, Sackler Center for Arts and Education, New York. Metropolitan Museum of Art, Sackler Wing, New York. Quite a lot. And then we get the interesting parts. Ashmolean Museum of Art and Archaeology, Sackler Keeper of Antiquities. Housed in the University of Oxford in the UK. British Museum of Raymond and Beverley Sackler Rooms in London. The City and Guilds of London Art School, Sackler Library. Of what? Opioids. The Dulwich Picture Gallery, Sackler's the director, and the Sackler Centre for Art Education in London. The National Gallery, the Sackler Room in London. National History Museum, Sackler Biodiversity Imaging Laboratory, London again. The Royal Ballet School, London, funded by the Sackler Trust. Royal Botanic Gardens, the Kews Sackler Crossing. For a pretty nondescript family. But I haven't finished. The Royal College of Arts, Sackler Building, London. The Royal Opera in London. Dame Teresa Sackler is the honorary director there. The Serpentine Sackler Gallery in London. Shakespeare's Globe Studios is now named Sackler Studios. Shakespeare. The Tate Modern Gallery has an escalator named Sackler. The University of Cambridge, Raymond and Beverley Sackler, Distinguished Lecturer in Archaeology again. The University of Oxford, the Sackler Library. The Victoria and Albert Museum, the Sackler Courtyard, again in London. And then the classics, the last three. Westminster Abbey, where all the royals get married. There's a stained glass window in the church dedicated to the Sackler family. I kid you not. France, the Louvre, the Pyramid, the Egypt, the Sackler wing of antiquities in Paris. And the final one, a Sackler staircase in the Germany Jewish Museum in Berlin. How did he get all these? Like I said, the question is, why is a Jewish family interested and acquired from Egypt? Bear in mind that snake, Zahi Hawass, won't let anyone near any of it. So they can cover up all the pieces that don't fit into his story, not ours. Unless the Sackler family, like some others in New York, are all part of the Egypt Ra cult. It goes on. More connections. Facebook was in trouble this week, and of course one of their CEOs left. And here's another one. Sheryl Carr Sandberg, an American technology executive, activist, author and billionaire. She is the chief operating officer of Facebook and the founder of Leanin.org. Now, in June 2012, she was elected to Facebook's board of directors by the existing board members, becoming the first woman to serve on its board. But before she joined Facebook as its COO, Sandberg was Vice President of Global Online Sales and Operations at Google, and was involved in launching Google's philanthropic arm, Google.org. Before Google, Sandberg served as Chief of Staff for the United States Secretary of Treasury, Lawrence Summers. Sandberg was born in Washington, D.C. to a Jewish family. In 2009, Sandberg, here's another connection, was named to the board of Walt Disney. Are you getting the picture again? She was previously a board member of Starbucks, the Brookings Institute and the Ad Council, advertising platform for NGOs, non-government organisations, and also the agencies. In 2004, she married Dave Goldberg, who was then an executive with Yahoo and later CEO of SurveyMonkey, which is a cloud-based software company. See how it all connects now? It's unbelievable, the depth of it. And we'll continue to pull more threads and connect them all up. This is a piece one of the members sent me. I'm going to read out, and it kind of fits in. Perhaps I should have read this just after the history of the IRS. And it's a congressional record. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11, bankruptcy. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the US government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March the 9th, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89 through 719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. March the 9th, 1933. HJR 192, 73rd Congress in session, June 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and official capacities of all United States governmental officers and departments, and is therefore further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. That's why they brought in all those laws in 1934. Problem, reaction, solution. They were all gone. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations. Except if memory serves me correctly, the United Nations wasn't set up until 1940s. It was the League of Nations. I could be wrong. Well, maybe it was 1923. The World Bank, no surprise there, and the IMF. All United States officers, officials and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers, with the constitutional republican form of government now dissolved. The receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States, not America, United States, which means Europe. United States was created under the Congress of Vienna, Austria, in 1812. This new form of government is now known as a democracy. Oops. Being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. Oops. The commies are coming. No, they arrived in hidden form, and they weren't Russians either. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. So the Secretary of Treasury became the Governor of the IMF. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the US Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Countries being hijacked. The Nazis are coming. No, they were here a long time ago. The Russians are coming. No, they never arrived. Just fake Russians, Jews. Told you very early on in THI, American history is fake from day one. Even more so in the last 100 years. And many are working hard to correct it. And we're making good progress. It may seem like things are not happening, but lots is happening. Far more than it ever did 3, 4 or 5 years ago. Just maybe not some of the things that we would really like to happen. And I get that. But with so many snakes and factions and hidden organisations running things that people don't even realise they're running, then you understand how far all this shit goes. Final piece tonight, how all can have a positive influence on themselves and those around them. Now, we've all been in a situation where one person kind of drags the whole room down, or the whole bar, or whatever, with negativity or just generally complaining, and how you all feel flat, uncomfortable, and wanting to get out of that room or avoid it, or in some cases want to slap the person. You know. So if that one person or group can have that effect to create the low vibration, why can't the people do the opposite and create the opposite effect? It's about transmuting. You just replace negativity with positivity. And is it not the case we kind of tolerate and absorb too easily these low vibrational frequencies? You know, no one goes into to deliberately lower someone else's vibration in most cases. But why does it always become so addictive and so easy a suit to wear? It only takes one person to mention that they are sick or their life is not much fun, and in chimes others saying the same things. It is almost addictive behaviour. And yes, life can be shit, and the world is messed up, but the world is messed up in portion because we are. We haven't collectively addressed ourselves. Now, too often we all jump into victimhood mode, and I was no different until around my early 30s. The world and life was against me. Nobody likes me, etc., etc., until one day I decided maybe I am playing a role in this, and it's not all external. And then things changed drastically for me personally there on in. From low confidence, low self-worth and insecurities all started to melt away, and a new lease of life was born. And suddenly the guy who didn't want to go on vacations not only wanted to go on them, but to emigrate to a vacation place as well. Now that took another 8 years, but by that time I was a completely different person. I changed my own outlook. I no longer allowed personal drama and bad incidents around affect me too much. 45-55 balance achieves that. Now I still get a load of shit, a load of attacks, interference, fun and games, way beyond the average person does, as this telling the truth game has many pitfalls, as we all know. But who would have thought trying to teach people the truth would lead to people who've never met you or spoken to you attack you just for the sake of it? Kind of a sad state of affairs, really. But it's also a reflection of society today. Those who won't face reality, those who are ego or money driven, or just riddled with layers and layers of personal insecurity. They see anyone who vibrates at a higher rate as a threat. No. If you're envious of someone, you have to work harder to achieve the status that you're envious of, not drag those people down. But it doesn't have to be that way. It never did. We don't need executive orders, government bills, rules or legislations to change how we are. It just takes you to sit down, do a life review of where you are at, where you can improve and where you would like yourselves to be in terms of life now, and how you can create your future in your image. Not society's generalised low vibration image. We've had enough of that shit. Life's all about swings, high and low, ups and downs, like the metronome. It just doesn't stop unless you interact. Don't get too down if things are not going your way. Don't get too up if things are. Just take it all in your stride. 45, 55. A 5% correction is manageable. 20, 30 or 40% are not. Now there's no way I can do or be involved with what I do with my pendulum swinging from side to side. I would literally spiral out of control or sink. Life would be reactive, which is regressive, and not proactive, which is progressive. And it's all about the balance. How can you achieve balance with anger, mood swings, reactionary behaviours, negativity, complaining? The answer is pure and simple: you can't. You can't properly meditate with those emotions swirling inside of you either. Meditation is about attaining an inner peace, being with yourself, not with the world, with you. But how can you do that with chaos and low vibrational thinking patterns pervading most of yourselves? You just can't. Some people often wonder, why am I always sick? Well, in many cases it's because of stress, the same low vibrational frequencies, as you haven't been able to attain a balance or an inner peace in your life. And this puts undue strain on your immune system and lowers your abilities. And viruses love that environment, and they will attack you with glee. A lower immune system then interacts with your lower vibrational frequencies, and a bond is made. You are bound with it. But someone who masters their own being will deflect all of that as a natural cause. It won't interact, as the body will alert you and instinct will move you away. So you have to alter your path. And the first thing you have to look at and do is be honest with yourself. It's a lot harder than many think. We lie to ourselves constantly and then recreate an image of us to present to others. But that is the mask, the illusion, and subsequently an illusion. It's like being in a hall of mirrors. You become distorted. How can a distorted image be the best version of you? No matter how many times you lie to yourself and circle, it's still not you. And this is why the shadow and inner work is so important, but it only reaps benefits by being honest with yourself. It will be painful doing that work. There's no getting away from that, as the onion layers you have created of not addressing the issues have mounted up and become much larger than it ever needed to be. I'll deal with that later. It's like an office worker just putting pieces of paper in the outbox. I'll deal with that later. Next minute it's up to the ceiling. And if you're dealing with it bit by bit, it becomes easier. Traumas, pain, anxiety, shame, guilt and anger all bubble to the surface, but they all have to be transmuted into something more positive, and that can take time depending on the individual. It is a process. It won't take one session or 2 weeks and it can take years depending on how many layers or how condensed with the low vibrational frequencies you are. Some in the group have gone through traumas in this life and past lives that are not easy to deal with. You have to piecemeal it. You can't rush it. But leaving it and leaving it and leaving it never solved anything. And as each layer is processed, released, or you're at peace with, those gaps then have to be replaced with something that's more positive and of a higher vibrational frequency, and preferably source-based energies. which you've been told how to develop. The first thing to fix after releasing it is to praise yourself for the accomplishment of overcoming that hurdle. A hurdle you have held on to because you couldn't face it. Well, now you have. So praise away. Self-praise, when it's in truth, can lift you far higher than external praise will ever do. And will also perhaps make you realise how many of you knock yourselves lower by your own comments. Suddenly you will feel lighter. Why? Because your lower frequency has been reduced. These lower frequencies weigh heavy on the body's immune system, mind and heart. Denser and heavy is 3D. Lighter is heading towards 4D. 4D, in 4D, you are 10% of the denseness you are in 3D. That's why you feel lighter. Higher vibrational frequencies has a light feeling about it. You're less dense. The low vibrational frequencies are heavy. Most heart conditions are not because the person smokes or eats fatty foods. It's because the heart has been put under too much stress. It's the cause of all organ failure. And the person has not adequately dealt with it. And this, as I said, applies to other conditions also. And these are things we can all fix. Operating in love, caring for others, helping others, non-judgmental, balanced state, positive outlook, all raise your frequency and creates and enhances your own PSI field to boot. And what happens then is you will then attract the like-minded PSI fields, the same frequency, and your circle of influence increases. Some of the higher vibrational frequency people have a radius of 25 miles. Sadly, they are few, but that's the influence it can have. And what you will find, the higher your frequency go, your lower frequency associates and friends will suddenly fade from your life. Why? They're not in the same resonance as why. You attracted those people when you operated in low vibrational frequency. Like attracts like a magnet. Suddenly you've gone on a higher frequency and those people fade away. And whilst it's not the external change that many people seek, but if we all change internally, you will all find that most of the external desires will cease to be as important as you think they are. Something to ponder. Final piece tonight, something I haven't said in a while. I know at least one of our members loves this piece and wants me to say it more. Well, here we go. If you lead life in love and care, you will prevail. If you lead life in fear and anger, you will fail. Feel free for you to be the person you wish to be, not the person who conforms to what others want them to be. You are a multi-dimensional being operating simultaneously on many levels. You are not here to conform. You are not here to be stifled. You are not here to be enslaved. You are not here to be abused or to compete with your friends, family or neighbours. You are here to be the best you can be. and do so as a crown of creation. Now go out with the confidence of who and what you are, and excel in yourself, and in doing so, inspire others. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now. We're all still standing.